welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
That's Scott.
And we are here to recap the Super Wildcard Weekend of the NFL 2024-2025 playoffs, in which 5 out of the 6 games resulted in massive blowouts. Only one was close, but we did see a lot of things that surprised us in these games, learned a lot about these teams and their resilience and their failures. We're going to get into all of that, as well as previewing the NFL Divisional round, widely regarded as the best weekend in all of football, if not in all of sports. But before we get to that, we're going to start off by recapping all 6 of the Super Wildcard Weekend games, starting with a game between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Houston Texans, in which the Texans dominated the field at home, winning 32-12. And Scott, what were your thoughts from this one?
This game was 100% the most surprising for me. I mean, going back to last week when I took the Chargers as my against spread picks, like I said as much. So this was one of the most confident picks that I had the entire year, and was really proven wrong. In this game, like obviously one of the biggest headlines is Justin Herbert, of course, throwing more interceptions in one game than he did the entire season this year. And that is an absolutely huge aspect to why the Chargers lost this game. And looking at the receiving yards, too, out of Herbert's 242 yards, I think it was 197 went to Ladd McConkey. Like, that's an issue, definitely.
Yes, and to me, I definitely, when I watched this game, I was extremely frustrated with Herbert. Like you said, only threw 3 interceptions the whole season and throws 4 in this one. Very uncharacteristic of him. But I really want to give big props to this Texans defense. I mean, the Chargers could not run the ball at all. I mean, that was the mark of the Chargers team this season. They were a run-first team for sure. And J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards both only around 3 yards per carry and totaling less than 50 combined yards for the game. That really was something that I was really impressed with, especially considering that the Chargers didn't get down in the game that early. It really was second and third quarters that the Texans started to run away with this game. I mean, it was 6-0 after the first quarter, 10-6 at halftime. And so the Chargers had opportunities to try and, get that run game going, and they just could not do it. I think that's what led to Herbert making so many errant throws and the Texans being able to just play the game on their terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And even being able to see one of their higher offensive outputs, like offensively in terms of yardage-wise and even points scored directly by the offense, is something that's probably a good sign for this team. And you hadn't even been seeing C.J. Stroud throw for that high yardage in quite some time.
Yeah, and once again, having a good playoff performance. C.J. Stroud seems to turn it on when he gets to the playoffs. Very, very good to salvage the season, because a lot of us thought that, I thought we both thought this game was pretty much a scratch. I mean, I was very, very confident the Chargers were going to win this game. I know you were as well. And I'm very surprised and very impressed by what I've seen with the Texans. The Texans were a team that were coming into the playoffs really not looking good at all. I mean, getting blown out by the Ravens, losing to the Chiefs big time as well. Not looking good, not feeling great about their performance. And they come out here, and big props to, again, the defense, but D'Amico Ryans getting his guys ready and juiced for this game. Nico Collins showing up in a big way. C.J. Stroud making all the right throws. I'm very impressed with this Texans team as they go on to face the Chiefs. I don't know how I feel about their odds there, but I think if you're the Texans and you look at the season and Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs getting hurt and Stroud over the course of the season not having the year that you wanted him to have, I think getting to this point and winning a playoff game, you got to be feeling pretty good. I know it wasn't the season that a lot of us wanted from them to start off the year, but considering how the year progressed, I think getting to the divisional round is a pretty good feat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's as good as you could want from them, and they could certainly take some momentum into it for next season.
Yes. And the Chargers, I was disappointed. I wanted to see him win this one. I really think Justin Herbert is a great QB, but unfortunately has never won a playoff game. And played his worst game, maybe of his career in this one. Very unfortunate to see. I think this definitely, for me, puts into question his status as like an elite level quarterback. I think he definitely has a talent, but at some point we have to judge him on his production and what he's been able to do. I still like his talent, but I don't know. I now this game puts in doubt to me his status as one of the top contender quarterbacks in this league.
I think it's certainly a conversation, but I think Herbert could get all the better if he's surrounded by more weapons, and I think by a more competent offensive coordinator, one that's more suited for him anyway. I've voiced that several times. I really dislike Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator, especially for teams that have good quarterbacks. I think he really limits them and acts like he has Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback.
Yeah, I definitely, I see your point on that. Herbert, he didn't really have a great season passing the ball, only threw 3 interceptions and protected the ball, which is nice, but never really was able to lean into making big throws and throwing consistently for a lot of yards. And it just didn't feel like he was the driving force on that offense, which I think he needs to be if the Chargers want to go to the next level. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they approach next season. Like I said, I think this was kind of a building year for them, and a year in which they went from 5 wins to 11 and making the playoffs. So pretty impressive stuff by Harbaugh and that coaching staff. So next season, I agree. I'd like to see maybe a change at the offensive coordinator position, or at least get some weapons for Herbert to throw to.
Yeah.
All right, and from there, we're going to move on to the second game of Wild Card Weekend, a divisional matchup between the Steelers and the Ravens, in which the Ravens dominated Pittsburgh in this one, doubling them up 28-14. And what were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, going into this game, like seeing the spread of this one, like even knowing that Baltimore had just covered it just a few weeks ago, it still put a little bit of doubt in my mind, even knowing and thinking in my mind how much more talented and much better of a team I believe Baltimore is. There's still some nervousness to that game because of historically how close these two teams had played. But those doubts were quickly cast aside in this one. And just as what I saw very interesting in this game, the Ravens had more first downs in the first half than the Steelers ran plays. Yeah, the Ravens had 18 first downs first half. Steelers only ran 17 plays. It started just from the word go, and Ravens just dominated this entire way. 40 minutes of possession. Yeah, just a pretty dominant game by them.
Yeah, this game was never in question. And you look at the score, the box score, and the passing yard, the Steelers having a lot more. But then you look at the rushing yards. Ravens holding the Steelers to 29, while the Steelers, meanwhile, giving up almost 300 rushing yards to the Ravens. I mean, this Ravens offense, sometimes it feels like it's just unfair. Like, it's not fair that you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the same team. That shouldn't be allowed. It feels like this is like Madden, and it's like you adjusted the salary cap so you could just add whoever you want, and you chose Henry and Lamar. It's crazy. But for the Ravens, it was frustrating for them a lot of the year because you felt like you had so much talent and it wasn't coming to fruition. And then now, the last few weeks, it's finally like, yes, see, this is what we're talking about. This is the team that we all wanted to see. This is the team that we believed in. And a team that I doubted. I'm not going to lie. I thought, I marked my words in many times saying the Steelers would finish ahead of the Ravens. Obviously, I was wrong about that. And so big credit to the Ravens. They look like they are just a really great team. Going to be a really exciting matchup against the Bills. But on the Steelers side of things, this is just kind of the same old from them. Now 0-5 in their last 5 playoff games. Haven't won a playoff game in over 8 years. And a little bit, you're kind of left once again being like, where do we go from here? Who's going to be our quarterback? What's going to be the future of our offense? We know our defense is going to be good. We know we're probably going to win 9 games, but do we really want to sign up for another season where we know we have no shot to win anything? It's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I don't really think, I know Russell Wilson said he wants to be back, and Tomlin really didn't. A lot of people think Tomlin might be gone. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if they do get rid of Tomlin, like, mark my words, I don't think it will happen, but you guys will not be good for a very long time if you get rid of Tomlin. He's, in my opinion, been the only reason, or one of the only reasons, that you have even been decent. Your offense has just been disastrous. And Russell Wilson gave him some stabilizing, but I'm curious to see, like, are they going to bring him back? And what do you think? Do you think they should bring Wilson back? Do you think they have a shot to run it back and do something with Wilson? Because I certainly don't.
Yeah, neither do I. And if you're talking about Tomlin and possibly firing Tomlin, if you're even considering that, I think the question you need to ask is, why are we in the position that we're in right now? Do we think we can't get out of the wild card round ever because of Tomlin? Or do we think it's because we've not gotten enough talent on this team, and Tomlin has brought in the most talent out of a team that has no business being in the playoffs a lot of those years, in which I think that's certainly the case, that he's brought in very less talented teams to the playoffs. And maybe there's some versions where he didn't bring the best things out of the playoffs. But overall, he's a very good coach to be able to get some of these Steelers teams to the playoffs. I think he is not the problem at all. It's about the talent you've surrounded with on that roster. So I think more of the decisions that you need to look at is how do you improve that roster and maybe consider firing the GM instead.
Yes. And for the Steelers, like they have not had an offensive player since Antonio Brown, like Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, that could take over the game. They have not, like Russell Wilson. No, what are their weapons? Pickens, he's good, but I wouldn't consider him elite, especially with his attitude problems. Najee Harris, Warren, again, they're good, but they can't take over a game. You look at all these other teams that we all think have shots to win the Super Bowl. The Ravens have several offensive players that could take over the game. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry now, and even Mark Andrews, just a dominant force at the tight end position. The Bills, Josh Allen going superhero mode. And I mean, the Bills, maybe not the best example of that because they really only have Allen, although Cook is a rising star. But on all those years when they had Diggs, he could take over the game. The Chiefs with Mahomes and Kelsey, all the teams that we think every year are serious contenders, they all have at least one guy in the offense that the defenses are afraid of. But nobody on the Steelers offense for years has inspired any fear in any defense. And that's just, to me, that's been the huge problem for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and now going from there, we go on to the aforementioned Buffalo Bills, who I think we're both happy to see them take care of business against the Broncos 31-7. And what were your takeaways from this absolute domination?
Yeah, I think domination it was. Even if it didn't quite look like that at first, yeah, it was off to a very bad start with an absolute bomb from Knicks to Troy Franklin. And here's an interesting stat. Believe it or not, that was the first ever playoff touchdown from rookie to rookie. Had never happened before.
Wow.
But anyways, nothing ever transpired good for the Broncos after that, missing the field goal that could have tied it into going into the half. But even at that point, you could feel the tide certainly turning in Buffalo's favor as the momentum all seemed to be on their side, and the Broncos were not seeming to do much, and you could just tell the Bills were about to really break through.
Yeah, I was never really worried about this one, despite the close score at halftime. I felt like, okay, the Bills have this game in control. The defense is handling the Broncos. The first drive is the drive where everything's scripted. You have all week to think about what you're going to do on that drive. And the Broncos did well on that drive. But after that, they just had no ability to move the ball, really, and just did not capitalize on any opportunities that they had. Bills playing a very smart game, not turning the ball over, not doing anything stupid, and still being able to crush a team like the Broncos. It's games like this, because I feel like the Bills they usually get a weaker opponent in the first round. I know you were talking about this. It's games like this that makes me wonder, do we really need a 7 seed in the NFL? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's true. Because when you talk about Denver's season, I think that they have truly reached their point. Like, this was their Super Bowl. This was the icing on the cake. To be able to make it here has been absolutely great progress from them. Bo Nix has had a very good rookie season. I think there's really no complaints if you're a Broncos fan.
Oh, absolutely. I think Bo Nix surprised a lot of people this season. He definitely looked like I think the second best rookie behind Jane Daniels. And in a year where Jane Daniels just puts up historic numbers, any other year Bo Nix would definitely be, heavily considered for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think there's a lot to like about Nix, and especially considering that now it was announced that and revealed that he was playing through significant injuries for a large portion of the season. So I think he could definitely have a really nice year next season. And it really looks like this is a team that we thought was going to be terrible for so long just because of that terrible Russell Wilson contract. Now it looks like there's some excitement around this Broncos team, and we'll see what they're able to do in the coming years. But if you're a Broncos fan, you definitely have to like where you're at.
Yeah, definitely some big progress for that team. We'll see what kind of offseason they can have, see if they can continue to add some more talent to that offense for build around Bo Nix.
Absolutely. And from there, we're going on to the NFC side of things, of the games that happened on Sunday. The first one was my Green Bay Packers taking the L against the Philadelphia Eagles by a score of 22-10. What were your takeaways from this one?
Yeah, this is just a pretty sad game to be a Packers fan. To lose all the players that you have, like the injuries just continue to pile up, and going into a game where you already out Christian Watson and Love banged up, just to make things even worse. And you're seeing on the other side a team in Philadelphia who, although was dominating in most ways, like just couldn't seem to quite get out of their way to put points on the board. I mean, there's only 131 passing yards. Like when you're seeing that on the box score on the other side, and you're still not able to get things done, like it makes a question where you're at as a Green Bay franchise.
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles. I saw a stat. Jalen Hurts has never thrown for over 200 yards in a playoff game except for the Super Bowl. Every other game, he has thrown for under 200 yards. So that has got to get better. The Eagles, I know we saw A.J. Brown being a big baby, reading the book on the sideline, but he has a point, I think. You have to be able to throw the ball. I mean, 100 yards, that's not going to cut it against teams of higher caliber and teams that actually seem like they want to win. Packers this game just looked flat. They looked sloppy. They looked flat. And after that first play, which was just an awful call by the refs, I think the Packers recovered it clearly, but it just awful. It was just very symbolic of what was to come in this game. The Packers' injuries, though, that was just brutal. I mean, going into the game, Love was gimpy with that elbow. Watson was out. And then throughout the game, just injury after injury. Romeo Doubs got hurt, left the game. Jaden Reed got hurt, left the game. Now you're out your top three receivers. And the big one was Elton Jenkins getting hurt early in that game because the Packers did not have the depth on the offensive line to account for that injury. I mean, Glover came in and just had 3 penalties in a very short amount of time, 2 or 3 drives. And he swapped out. Teleport comes in, and he is just struggling as well. It just was not good. Sloppy football. And despite all of that stuff, though, this game was there. The Eagles did not play well in this game at all. And there was a point in the third quarter where you felt like it could have happened, but Love just really was unprepared for this moment. And this is something that I called, and it's so frustrating because the last few weeks I was saying you have to let Love play. I think at the beginning of the year, we got a little bit too scared of the turnovers, and we didn't allow the natural process of growth of a young quarterback. We tried to, Matt LaFleur, as great as a coach I think he is, he tried to overcoach him. I think that's a big problem sometimes when you have these brilliant young coaches. They tend to overcoach sometimes. Sometimes you just have to let the kid play. And when it came time for Love to step up, like, okay, your receivers are out. You have to take over this game. He just was completely unprepared for the moment. And so it was very disappointing end to what I thought could have been a promising season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Love looked extremely erratic. He looked very uncomfortable in that game. And he committed the turnovers. I mean, at some point you can't blame him for taking the shots he did because they had no other choice. But yeah, the disappointing end of the season for the Packers that I certainly believe had a lot of potential, but ended up just seeing it spiral down the drain right at the end.
Yeah, 100% agree. And this season, I think Love was definitely the weak link consistently. I mean, the defense, man, I'm excited for this defense. I think that at first they showed that they could get those turnovers. That was something that Jeff Hafley noted the most. He's like, first, we're going to get turnovers. The Packers only had like 3 or 4 turnovers last season. They exceeded that in like the first 2 weeks. So was very excited for that. But then we were also both like, okay, can they do more than just get turnovers? And it showed that they could. And they played really well. They gave up 22 points, but I mean, it's hard to hold the Eagles to less than that when your offense is just giving you short fields on all those turnovers. So I was very, very impressed with the Packers defense. At least that was a big positive, I think, this season. It's something you could take away going into next year.
Yeah, it wasn't the complete detriment that we had talked about at the end of last season.
Yes, for sure. All right, and then going on to the most exciting game of the wildcard weekend, a thriller between the Commanders and the Buccaneers, in which the Commanders prevailed on the road 23-20. And Scott, you called this one. What do you have to say about this game?
Yeah, it was a fun one. And I was a little bit in doubt there for the Commanders. That right there at the end of that game, they were having a really hard time punching the ball into the end zone. And when I'm watching that, I feel like this is not going to happen. Like, whatever I was watching on the screen, like, it just did not look right. It looked like something was going wrong for the Commanders. Like, they weren't scheming something properly, or the Bucs were just looking really good defensively. And I would give the Bucs props defensively. They were in the backfield all game long, disrupting things. It looked like they really could have had this game, but just some untimely, like, rookie mistakes by the Bucs were really what sealed their fate.
Yep, definitely rookie mistakes too. The center, man, I'm not going to put the whole game on him. The Washington Commanders played a very complete game, very solid game, but it still looked like the Buccaneers were going to win. Like at a certain point, when the Bucs got that ball on the turnover and downs, like I was like, okay, they're going to win. And it looked like they were driving the field. Baker was, I'm like, he had that gleam in his eye. I'm like, yeah, okay, the Buccaneers are going to win this game. And then that fumble. And that was the Baker Mayfield's going to get knocked for that on the stat sheet. But that wasn't his fault. That was the snapper's fault. That is a play when the guy is coming on that jet sweep sort of thing. That's a play that the timing of the snap is everything. And he snapped it too late. Baker trying to turn around, get it to the guy, and it just did not work. It's a rookie snapper. And on the fourth down for the Buccaneers on their last drive, he snaps it too late again. It's like, he looks like, or he snapped it too early. Baker Mayfield was not prepared to get the snap, and it was just kind of this weird play to end the game for the Buccaneers on the offensive side. So those were huge plays. Not blaming it on him altogether. Baker didn't have his best game, threw for less than 200 yards. And for the Buccaneers, they definitely they took advantage of being in a really weak division. I think they definitely, not saying they didn't deserve to be here, but I think it kind of showed that they didn't always play the toughest quality teams down the stretch, and the Commanders have really shown that they can be really clutch. And I think when it came to end of game situational football, the Commanders being better in that area is what spelled the end for Tampa Bay.
Yeah. When you look at Tampa's season, like they just weren't a complete team for the majority of the time. I mean, we even talked about, like, as our tiers a couple of weeks ago, that they had the potential to go to the conference championship. But I think we also hedged it with the fact that they had the potential to fall out immediately, which is what ended up happening. Because you just never know what kind of Bucs team you were going to get. Sometimes they were going to be able to hang 40 points on you, and sometimes it seemed like they would just fall over and die. And I wouldn't say this was definitely not a game where they fell over and died, because they were very competitive through it, and it was just some mistakes it made at the end. But it's just very interesting to ponder for a Bucs front office and where to continue with this franchise.
Yeah, definitely. I think Baker Mayfield's definitely the guy going forward. He had a great season, and he didn't play amazing in this one, but he was solid. 15 out of 18 passing, 185 yards, 2 TDs, and he had you in the game. And man, that run where he just trucks over Bobby Wagner, I mean, that put a smile on my face. Just an ultimate competitor, Baker Mayfield. A huge fan of him, obviously, if you've watched the show for any amount of time. So he's the guy going forward. And Bucky Irving, man, what a stud at running back. I think they found their long-term running back as well. Mike Evans in that aging wide receiving core could be a question. So I think you're probably going to have to get resources in the draft there. But I do like this Bucs team going forward. I really do. I think the division is kind of in tumult. I don't believe in Bryce Young and the Panthers. I don't believe in the Saints. They're going to be bad for a while. And the Falcons, big question mark there with Penix. So I think if the Buccaneers continue to be solid and continue to on this path, I think they could own this division for a considerable amount of time.
Well, let's see.
All right, from there, going on to the final game of Wildcard Weekend taking place on Monday night between the Vikings and the Rams. Rams prevailing 27-9. What were your thoughts from this one?
And I guess this would be the second most surprising game for me. I really didn't think that the Vikings would go out like they did. I definitely thought that they would have a more bounce-back game offensively, but the Rams ended up tying the sack record. They sacked Darnold 9 times. He looked extremely jittery. He looked completely out of place. Like, he was unable to make the throws. The Rams were just constantly in the backfield. They just did a really good job getting to Darnold and just not allowing him to have any time in the pocket to process things. And the Vikings weren't able to adjust things to make it easier on him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Kevin O'Connell called his best game in this game. I think Flores was bamboozled by the Rams on offense. He did a good job of adjusting, though, in the second half. But, man, that Rams offensive plan to start the half was just exquisite. I mean, it looked like they could not be stopped in that first half. Just very, very good football offensively by the Rams. But Darnold, man, some people were talking about, like, he was playing for hundreds of millions of dollars. You had a Vikings team that was 13-3 and could have the 1 seed. You go into Detroit and you play your worst game of the season. And now you're at the 5 going on the road facing a Rams team that's still 4 games worse than you in the season, and you could still revive it, and you play another terrible game. And now I just don't see any team being able to give Darnold the contract. So, and I really, it sucks because we were both of us doubted the Vikings. We're like, Sam Darnold, he's going to revert back to his old self. But then we were kind of like, okay, he's shown that he can win. But then sure enough, end of the season comes. And unfortunately, he was just, he fell back into his old ways.
Yeah. The Vikings have just had the innate ability to disappoint whatever I expect of them at all times. I think I picked against them 3 times in my against the spread, and they won all of those games. And I picked for them once, and they lost that one. And I ended up changing around my bracket. Like, I started making my bracket, and I just had a feeling, I'm like, I think this Minnesota team can be legit. I decided to change it up and have them in the NFC title game. Yeah, and that was obviously a very wrong feeling.
Yeah, I think we both at a certain point, it's just like, man, they win, they look great, they're a good team, and then turns out our initial instincts were right. Vikings, it's going to be interesting to see what they do next season. Is Sam Darnold going to be the starter? Are they going to go with JJ? Going to be interesting to see that. But I do believe in this coaching staff. Ultimately, I think O'Connell has shown this year he's been a great coach. This was a team that we thought would not even be close to relevant. And the fact that they were able to make the playoffs is very impressive. Obviously, the way it ended, disappointing. But if you zoom out and you view expectations at the start of the season and where they ended up, I think you really can't do much better than that.
Right.
All right, and from there, that wraps up our analysis of the Wild Card Weekend. But wait, there's one more thing. We have Scott's famed Clown of the Week, and it's going to get wild with the Clown of the Week for the Wild Card Weekend.
Everybody loves a good clown, and now it's time to meet the NFL's Clown of the Week for this week.
And this week, the Clown of the Week in the NFL is Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown. So Brown is seeming to want to get a pretty good image for himself in this game, in this playoff round, getting some definite footage on the broadcast of him reading a book on the sidelines, just seeming to appear pretty smart and philosophical with what he's reading. And to me, that is just utter clown-worthiness, seeing as you were targeted 3 times, had 1 catch for 10 yards in this game. It wasn't like you were absolutely blowing out this team. You were not a factor in this game, and you're in a playoff game. It's not like you're sitting starters here. Like, A.J. Brown, you're still in this game. Like, there was a little bit of doubt in this game, and you're playing a real opponent next week, in a game where you were not effective, and this passing game has been weak. It is absolutely clown-worthy to be able to sitting out and reading a book on the sideline, just for your own image, trying to make yourself look better. How about you're out there, like, maybe looking at your team, looking at some tape, trying to figure out where you can improve? Because that's certainly something that needs to happen for this team. Like, and you're just not even in the space of a football game in that point. Like, that is absolute clown-worthiness to me. For that, A.J. Brown, you are the Clown of the Week.
All right, and from there, we're going into a little segment where we are going to be rapid-fire questions. And these are going to be questions we have about a minute to respond to, rapid-fire style, picking out some of the most intriguing things that we have seen this season and what's to come. So I'm going to get it started off here. And I'm going to go to my Green Bay Packers, who were just recently eliminated. So after this game, we obviously saw Jordan Love be, look bamboozled out there, not ready for the moment, and the offense really not producing towards the end of the season. So my question to you is, do you think that the Packers need a bona fide star wide receiver to get over the hump next season?
Now, when I'm thinking about that, I think that it definitely could help. Do they absolutely need it? I think I would go with no. When you look at the top wide receiver in this league, I think they can certainly elevate it, but you're looking at the ways to be able to bring that in. Like, what would that look like, especially with the receiving core that you have right now? I think you have a lot of guys that are good. So what are you doing to be able to do that? You're probably giving up somebody in some form or fashion. And to me, I don't know that that's how viable that is. or what you're looking at to be able to accomplish that. So I'm going to go with no. Now I'll fire back a question for you. So do you think that after this game that you've seen this week from the Commanders and what Daniels had looked like in his rookie season, do you think that Washington could be a contender for years to come?
I'm going to go with yes. I think Daniels, I know we've seen impressive years from rookies before, Stroud last season, and Bo Nix, and Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert. We've seen a lot of impressive rookie seasons. I think as the coaching has improved in the league, that's allowed rookies to make a more smooth transition. But with Daniels, I think what really stands out to me is the composure. I mean, this is like arguably one of the worst franchises in the league. A team that is just completely in tumult year after year. And he took this team and just the situational supremacy. Like they won 6 games this season as time expired. Like this is an incredible season from Daniels. He's had a great year, and it's not just playing well on the script. It's playing well with a defensive coordinator as your head coach. This has been just an incredible season from Daniels. The poise, the confidence. I think they got great weapons with McLaurin in there, and Diami Brown budding as a star as well. So yes, Commanders are going to be relevant, and they're going to be contenders for years to come. And now I'm going to fire a question to you here. Are you buying that the Detroit Lions Super Bowl window temporarily closes after this season, as they will likely lose both of their coordinators?
I'm going to say no, that I don't think it's going to close. I like what Dan Campbell has done. I think he's going to continue to believe in his players. I do like the roster that this team is surrounded with. Jared Goff may not be one of the top elite quarterbacks, but the other pieces they've surrounded him with, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the running backs is all you've got there. And the defensive players have got a rookie contract as well. I think that is more than enough for me to be able to keep in the Super Bowl window, especially when you're looking in the NFC. I don't see a lot of teams that I'm just super confident in that these teams are going to be the teams that are competitive. I see teams that I think could free fall or change next year. So I'm going to say that Detroit's playoff window is still going to be open, even if they lose their coordinators. Now, back to you. I'll keep another question in the NFC. Do you think that after how this season has ended for Sam Darnold, could he still get a massive deal in free agency? And maybe more importantly, should he?
So I think both the answer to the second question for me is obviously no. He's a guy that benefited greatly from Kevin O'Connell's scheme. We saw Kirk Cousins look really good in that scheme as well. And Kirk Cousins is a guy that's been overpaid his entire career, and as a result, the teams that he's been on have never been relevant. So the most disastrous thing for me, I think, is paying an average quarterback big QB money. So answer to the second question is definitely no. First question, I think, is a no. I mean, look at what team would pay him that much money. I mean, maybe he gets a deal from, one of the bottom feeders like the Titans or something like that, especially because this QB draft class is not great. But I think the way he ended the season has just been disastrous. I think the best that he is going to get at this point is like a Baker Mayfield contract where it's 3 years, 32, 33 million a year. I think that's going to be the precedent a lot of teams look at. They're looking at, hey, you think you're better than Baker? What did you do? You haven't won a playoff game in your whole career. So I think answer to both questions are a no for Sam Darnold. And I'm going to fire you my final question here. And this is going to be about your Bills. Are you buying that a loss this week against the Ravens means or should mean that Sean McDermott will no longer be the Bills head coach going into next season?
I would deny that question. I think that McDermott has proven that he can do more with less, especially when it comes to that defense. I think he has really taken the best out of this roster, and what many people considered was going to be more of a retooling season, and people weren't sure if the Bills were going to be competitive. The Bills had one of their most competitive years still, and I think that is a large part to McDermott. I think he has really evolved as a coach a lot since he became a head coach in Buffalo. I think you've seen him really amp up his aggressiveness and being able to help the team win games in that way. And if they lose this game, it could be on McDermott again. There have been games that have been pinned on him, but I think that he should remain the coach in Buffalo, whether they win or lose. And the final question I have for you this week. do you think the NFL should adopt a format where the highest seeds will host playoff games? The division winners will still get in the playoffs, but 4 high seeds would host the playoff game.
So this is an interesting question. So to me, I think no. I don't think that the current format is the best. I think the way it was before, where the top 2 got buys and only 6 teams made it, was better than this way. I think there really is no need to have 7 seed in there, and that would hurt obviously because my Packers have gotten 7 seed in the last 2 years. But I don't think you need the 7. The division, I like having the divisions. I think what makes the NFL unique is that they have those divisions, and you have a clear goal of like, okay, we win this division and we're in. We're going to get a home game for that right of winning that division. And I know a lot of people are against, like, they don't like the divisions. I think it's great. I think it's hard to some people think, oh, some divisions are weak, some are strong, but it's hard to beat those teams that you see twice every single season. It's not an easy thing to do. So I think that in itself is worthy of hosting a playoff game. So I would say no. I don't think they should change the format.
All right.
All right, they're going on from our rapid fire questions into the game picks for this division round weekend. And this is personally my favorite weekend in football. I know it is yours as well. And we got some good ones this week. So starting it off here with the Saturday games, we have the Houston Texans taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And who do you have taking this matchup?
I'll have Kansas City winning this one.
I will also take the Chiefs.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of talk this week from people that I've listened to. It's like, oh, maybe we doubted Houston. Maybe they are a little bit more legitimate. Maybe this is going to be a close game between these two games. No, absolutely not. I think we just saw these teams play a little bit ago. The score wasn't horribly lopsided, but I think Kansas City did absolutely dominate that game. And Houston had to get 4 turnovers from their defense to be able to help win that game in LA. And I just don't see them getting that type of game from Kansas City. I don't see Kansas City committing that many turnovers, because I think that is the path for the Texans to win a game. I don't think you're going to get out here and just somehow boat race the Chiefs. Their defense is not going to allow that, for starters. And yeah, I just see a very hard time, even though the Chiefs have not been scoring points at the rate that they have in the past. Like, yeah, I just don't see them being able to be in that type of game. I think the Texans need a lot of turnovers, and I don't think it's going to happen for them.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said there. The Texans need everything to go right in order for them to win this game. The Chiefs are coming off a bye, 2 weeks of buys, so they're going to be amply rested. I think maybe the Texans can maybe take advantage of some rust in the first half, but they really would have to seize that opportunity quickly. Unfortunately, I just don't think the Texans have the offensive firepower to do that. When you're playing without 2 of the pieces that you thought were going to be key to push you over the edge, in Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. I mean, Stephon Diggs, I forgot that he was even a player. He's been out for so long. But that was the big thing. Like, hey, we got this great receiving core, and that's what's going to kind of propel us further than last season. They don't have that, and they haven't had that all season. So, yeah, I mean, this is a team that, despite last week when they were handed 4 turnovers, they really have not performed well. They only scored 2 points against the Ravens, which was the last playoff caliber team they faced. And they faced the Chiefs last time, they didn't even break 20 points. So I'm taking the Chiefs all the way. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Then we go on to a Saturday night game between the Washington Commanders, fresh off their win against Buccaneers, taking on the 1-seeded Lions. And who will you have taking this game?
I'll have the Lions winning this one.
I'm going to also take the Lions.
This game could be quite interesting, because at this point, you have a team in the Commanders that are absolutely playing with house money. They've gotten the playoffs. They've turned this franchise around. They won a game. Like, you're playing with house money here. Like, anything that happens, it's icing on the cake. And like, even last game, you saw what Dan Quinn and his aggressiveness was able to do. He went for it on 4th down 4 times when he was in field goal range.
Yeah.
And the way I look at that, I look at it as a very good thing. Because what they ended up doing was they scored 2 touchdowns, 2 turnovers on downs, and 14 points is worth more than 12.
Yep, absolutely. I like those decisions as well. Playing with, not a lot of pressure, you're definitely able to do that. But the Lions have done that, playing with the most pressure, being the best team, the 1 seed, like the entire season, and they do that as well. So this is going to be a very non-traditional game. Hopefully Troy Aikman's not calling this one because he'll go crazy of all these fourth down going for it. So he might have a heart attack. So hopefully he doesn't call this one. But the Lions, yeah, they're just a better team. They're coming off a bye. The biggest thing we were talking about is how depleted they were on the defensive side. But now that they have had a bye to kind of regroup and rest, much needed rest, I really don't think the Commanders can keep pace with them. The Lions are probably going to score on every possession. So Jaden Daniels is going to have to be darn near perfect, which I think he's been great this season, but I don't think he'll be able to do it this time.
All right.
And then we got the first of the Sunday games, a game between the LA Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. And who do you think takes this one?
All the Eagles winning this one?
I'm going to take my Rams here.
All right. So you look at the Eagles last week, I think we talked about that they had disappointed a little bit offensively, but I think I'm really projecting them to have them a little bit more of a turnaround offensively this week because I think we'd seen them be so good down the stretch of the season and that's something I would definitely want to see from the Eagles. I think it would be extremely disappointing to that team if they were just to peter out and end up losing here in the divisional round.
Yes, absolutely. And I just don't think the Eagles are. So I am going to take the Rams here. Like I said, Jalen Hurts not throwing for over 200 yards in most of his playoff games, where Stafford with the Rams averages almost 300 per playoff game. I think the Rams are going to win, not just because they're playing better. I think they are better, just straight up. In the playoffs, the Rams, I think, are a better team than the Eagles. I think they have the coaching advantage, clearly. I think they have the cute quarterback advantage. At this point, when you got A.J. Brown reading books on the sideline, I think they have the wide receiver advantage. The running backs, obviously, Barkley's been great. And the defense, the Rams have been weak, but they've been playing a lot better, and they got a young group of young guys that don't understand the pressures of the playoffs. They're playing free. They're playing loose. And to me, the Rams just have that edge. They have that chip on their shoulder, and the Eagles don't inspire a lot of confidence in me at all, just from what I've seen from them, especially that last couple weeks when they decided to rest their starters, and then they come out and they almost, if the Packers weren't literally trying to lose that game, I could have seen the Eagles dropping that one. So I'm going to go with my Rams here. Hopefully they can validate my confidence in them this season.
I think there are some reasons for me that why I'm fading the Rams a little bit. Like you mentioned Stafford's historical playoff performance. Like that certainly plays a part, but Stafford had only thrown for over 200 yards once in his last 4 games. So that's also what's been happening this season, as well as last week. They still got outgained in time of possession by Minnesota, only converted 2 out of 10 third downs, and committed 10 penalties last week. And I think those things are all a little bit concerning from this Rams team, as well as they've been below average in both points for and points against for the entirety of the season.
I think they're saving their best for last, though. I think that the Rams are a team that I would like to see more from them this regular season as well. But I just have a ton of confidence in them, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to really convince other people otherwise, besides pointing out that they've won a Super Bowl with this QB coach combination. They also now have Puka, who is someone they didn't have when they won that Super Bowl. And Jared Verse, who I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald, but he is a stud. And I think he gives them some spark on defense. But I think this is a combination of how I feel about the Rams and just the Eagles not really inspiring much confidence in me at all.
Sure.
And finally, to conclude the week, we have what should be just an absolutely incredible game. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. This is going to be a classic for the ages, hopefully. Who do you think comes out on top?
I'm going to stick with what I picked in my bracket, and I'm going to be picking the Bills.
I'm going to take the Bills as well.
Looking back on these two teams' season, they did face once back in October, and the Ravens absolutely dominated that game. But I think there are a lot of things for this Bills team that have changed since then. They were without Bernard. They were without Von Miller, Josh Allen was still suffering, coming back from his hand injury. There were a lot of pieces that were missing from that defense at that time. And although it was a bit more of the lack of offense that might have lost that game, I think was seeing Derrick Henry just absolutely run all over them. I don't think that it's something that's going to happen again, because in the past, the Bills have had games where they were able to stop Derrick Henry. And I think they might have the potential to put together something where he's not going to go off for 200 yards this time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And the Ravens, on one hand, I definitely see why the Ravens feel confident. Like you said, they blew up the Bills early in the season, and that was when the Ravens weren't even playing their best ball. It was only until recently that their defense really started stepping up. So I think if you're a Ravens fan, you have every reason to be confident. But I think if you're a Bills fan, you also have reason to be confident. I think this Bills team has just been consistently really, really good this season, and they have also gotten better. And historically in the playoffs, Lamar Jackson has just not been good at all. And it was really only last season that he started to at least look decent. And the last time these two teams met in the playoffs, Jackson was not able to do anything. And to me, this is a game that's going to be freezing cold in Buffalo. Those fans at Highmark Stadium are just going to be going berserk. I could see Lamar Jackson being overwhelmed in this one. Josh Allen, though, he's the X factor for this. I mean, obviously, I think he has just been playing absolutely incredible. I think he should be the MVP. When you look at this Bills team, I mean, I don't want to discredit the other guys, but Josh Allen's the heart and soul of this team. I mean, he perfectly embodies what it means to be a Buffalonian. It's just in general. I mean, he perfectly captures that image of what it means to be in Buffalo, that toughness, that grittiness, that ability to make any play possible. I think that he just gives them the keys to this game. I really hope that he's able to really play well in this one. I think it'll happen. I think the Bills will prevail.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about MVP real quick. I think Lamar Jackson has had MVP worthy season. I think definitely better than last season. The stats are all there. But for me, I think it's Allen, because you look at the reasons why this team is winning. It's just the reason why MVP should be dealt out. And I think Allen has played more of a part in why the Bills have done what they've done rather than Lamar. I mean, having Derrick Henry in hands can certainly help.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think Allen should be the MVP. Allen has come close in other years. He's gotten a couple votes in the past few years. But I think it would be unfair to give it to Lamar this year, I think, because last year we gave it to Lamar for like the same reason that we would give it to Allen this season. Because last year Lamar didn't have Henry with him, and the reason why we gave it to the Ravens was because they had a great regular season and they were able to get the first round bye. And the guy he was competing with, McCaffrey, we were like, okay, McCaffrey's kind of the product of a stacked team with the 49ers. Whereas Lamar was the guy that was carrying this Ravens team. And this year, the Bills, Allen's the guy that's carrying the Bills. Allen's the guy that led the Bills to a great regular season. And Lamar, while having great stats, he's kind of benefiting from a stacked Ravens offense with, a guy like Henry, which Allen doesn't have that type of guy on his team. So to me, I think it's unfair to switch up the criteria now when under the same criteria, you would have given it to Allen, if you know what I mean. I think it's unfair to be like, oh, we're going with the stats because Lamar's stats are better. It's like, well, there was a couple QB stats that were better last season. Like Jordan Love had great stats. Dak Prescott had great stats. Purdy had great stats. But we went with Lamar because we thought Lamar was the centerpiece. And so, maybe Lamar's stats are better than Allen's this season, but I think we should go with Allen because Allen is clearly the centerpiece of the Bills' offense.
Yeah, and I think I have one stat that I think it really drove it home for me. This season, each quarterback's win-loss record was 30-plus pass attempts. So in other words, the reason that when you need your quarterback to do the most, throw the most, Allen's record with 30-plus pass attempts, 7-2. Lamar Jackson, 2-5.
Yeah, definitely. Like the Ravens, a lot of the times when we say that the Ravens didn't win and we were disappointed, what do we usually say? We usually say, especially when it was the playoffs last season, they didn't run the ball enough. So it's like the key to the Ravens is running the ball. So it's like, man, we didn't take the ball away from Lamar enough. I know it's a little bit unfair way of spinning it, but that's essentially kind of what we're saying. With the Bills, it's usually like, man, Josh Allen didn't make this many plays, or he didn't make X amount of plays. Like, it's all about Allen with this Bills team. I don't want to sound like a homer because, I'm from Buffalo and everything, but it's just for me, it would be a shame considering how many great seasons Allen's had, how close he's come, it would be a real shame if he was not able to get this MVP.
Yeah. But focusing back on the game for a minute, I think this game could come down to who has the ball last. Similar to some of these classics that have been happening between the Bills and Chiefs, I think this certainly come down to who possesses the ball last.
Yes, and both kickers, not really trustworthy. Bass has been shaky, to say the least, and Tucker really has not been himself the last couple seasons. So I think you definitely have to take that into account. The weather is rarely predictable in Buffalo, especially at this time of season. So it's going to be interesting to see how these coaches approach it. I expect maybe we're going to see some more gutsy calls on fourth down. And going to be this is definitely going to be a heart attack game if you're a fan of either of these teams.
Absolutely.
All right, from there, we're going to go on to our against the spread picks, where I got back on the winning side of things last week, going with the Bills, getting me to 12-7. Scott, unfortunately, was not able to prevail. He drops to 8-11, but divisional round, new week, hopefully new mentality here. Who do you have as your against the spread pick for this week?
Maybe it's a little crazy, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with Detroit. I'm going to stick with Detroit minus 9.5. That is a massive spread. But I just have some trust in this team. I just think that, like you had mentioned, I think Detroit has the ability to go on down and score every single drive. This is what they've done all season, just continue to rack up points on this team. Even though I said, Commanders are playing with house money, they've had some issues with their defense. And even while I mentioned the last week, it looked like at times that they were having a tough time getting into the end zone against the Bucs. So I just think that Detroit has the potential to get that double-digit win. Even if it's a little closer for a majority of the game, I think Detroit definitely has the potential to get a double-digit win. So I'll take Detroit minus 9.5.
I like that one a lot. I too expect that to be, it definitely could get out of hand there with that Lions offense. But for me, I'm going to go back to the well here with my Rams team, plus 6.5. This is an absolutely asinine line. What a disrespectful line. After we saw the Rams dominate the Vikings and we saw the Eagles try to give that game away, 6.5. You're giving me almost a touchdown and an extra point. All the way, I'm taking the Rams. I think the Rams went straight up. I'd take this line if the Rams were minus 6.5. I think this is not going to be a very close game. The Rams plus 6.5. Give me a break all the way.
All right.
And from there, we're going on to Scott's parlay of the week. Divisional round means there's only 4 games, so could be a little bit difficult, could be interesting. What do you have for your parlay this week?
So I'm going to start things off. I'm going to oppose you a little bit. I'm going to end up taking the Philadelphia Eagles. I've got them on the money line. Looks to take. I think that the Eagles can be able to take care of business this game. It could be a little closer than that 6.5 line. So I'm just going to take the Eagles on the money line, which is pretty big. I've got them at minus 290 right now. Also on the money line, I'm going to be taking the Bills. It's a straight pick'em game, plus 100 right now for the Bills and the Ravens. Sticking with my pick, I'm going to be taking the Bills. And finally, to be able to get a little boost on the money, because unless you're picking underdogs, you're not looking to make a whole lot this week. We're going to be changing up, and we're picking against the spread. We're going to be taking the Chiefs minus 8.5 versus Houston. I think we both talked about how much that we think the Chiefs could be able to dominate this game, and I think that they certainly can do that. So I'll be taking the Chiefs minus 8.5. So this week, bet on the money line, Eagles, Bills, and take the spread for the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, minus that Eagles one. I like it. I like it a lot. And this is going to be just an awesome week. Divisional round football. The stakes couldn't get higher here. This is, like I said, awesome week of football. We also got the college football championship coming in on Monday. So just a great week if you're a sports fan. Sit back and enjoy these games. This is the season coming to a close. Cherish every moment of the exciting action this weekend. And we will be back next week to recap it and to preview the conference championships as the 8 teams go down to the final 4. But that will have to wait until next week. As for us, this has been all. Feel free to like, follow, and subscribe. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. This has been Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob
and Scott.
And we are tuning out.